Welcome back to Lurie Talks, where we jump into conversations that'll make you think, laugh, and maybe even learn something new.
I love that.
Today, we're heading straight into a cultural phenomenon that's been sparking some lively debates online. The idea that short people, particularly in Nigeria, are more stubborn.
And what's fascinating is this isn't just some fringe theory.
Right.
It's deeply ingrained in Nigerian culture.
Oh, really?
They even have a saying for it. Na, small pepper day hot pass, meaning small pepper is hotter.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's so descriptive. It kind of makes you wonder, is there any truth to it? We're diving deep into a Nairaland forum thread titled, "Is it true that short people are always stubborn?" And let me tell you, this thread is a gold mine of opinions, humor, and maybe even a little bit of truth.
It is. It's really fascinating. That's the beauty of these kinds of discussions.
Right.
They can be lighthearted and funny, but also reveal deeper insights into cultural perceptions and how we view each other.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break down the stereotype.
Yeah.
The general consensus on the forum seems to be that shorter people, maybe because they're not as tall in a society that often values height, might overcompensate by being more assertive, even stubborn.
It's an interesting thought, right? If you're constantly being underestimated or overlooked, maybe you develop a thicker skin and a stronger will to make your presence known.
Yeah.
It's almost like a way of saying, hey, don't underestimate me just because I'm not as tall as you.
Right, and some users even suggested this stubbornness might actually be a positive trait in disguise. Like, maybe it's not stubbornness, but determination, resilience. That famous Nigerian spirit of overcoming challenges.
What's fascinating here is how this stereotype might be connected to those deep cultural values.
Yeah, okay.
Nigerians are known for their resilience, their ability to thrive in adversity. So this stubbornness, if you will, could be another manifestation of that spirit.
I love how this single observation has opened up all these different layers of understanding about culture and psychology.
Yeah, it is.
But, of course, not everyone on the thread was buying into the stereotype.
Exactly. Several users pushed back hard, saying that stubbornness is a human trait not limited to any particular height.
Yeah.
They argued that plenty of tall people can be just as stubborn, if not more so, and they make a valid point.
Right.
Attributing personality traits solely based on physical characteristics can be misleading and inaccurate.
And it's important to remember that even when we talk about stereotypes, we're dealing with generalizations, not absolute truths.
Yes,
One
definitely.
user put it perfectly. It's a myth. People sometimes take advantage of short people, and when they respond cleverly, people would say they are stubborn.
That raises a really interesting point about perception and context.
Right.
What one person sees as stubbornness, another might see as self-respect or assertiveness.
Absolutely. And that's why these online discussions are so valuable, because they allow for those different perspectives to come out.
But speaking of valuable discussions, did you know that we have tons more thought-provoking content waiting for you on our website?
That's right. Head over to LurieTalks.com for show notes, extra resources, and all sorts of goodies related to today's topic. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to Lurie Talks, hit that like button, and share this episode with your friends who love a good thought-provoking discussion.
We're all about spreading the knowledge and sparking those fascinating conversations.
Now, getting back to this Nairaland thread, there were some pretty strong opinions being shared, some even bordering on offensive. For example, one user commented, "Short people are devil."
That comment definitely highlights the dangers of making sweeping generalizations.
Yeah.
However, what's crucial here is that we understand the diverse viewpoints within this discussion. While some comments perpetuate negative perceptions, many others challenge them, sparking a dialogue about individual differences.
Exactly. Another user pointed out the irony by saying, perhaps being tall is automatically being smart.
Oh, interesting.
It's a playful way of challenging the assumption that physical attributes dictate intelligence or character. And that brings us to another layer of this conversation, the potential psychological and sociological factors at play.
This is where it gets even more interesting.
So we were just talking about the psychological and sociological factors at play when it comes to this stereotype about short people and stubbornness.
Right.
And some users on the Nairaland forum brought up some really intriguing points.
Right. One suggestion was that if someone constantly feels overlooked or underestimated because of their height, it's natural for them to develop ways to assert themselves.
Right.
Maybe that comes across as stubbornness to some, but it could just be a coping mechanism.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if you're always having to prove yourself, maybe you develop a thicker skin and a stronger will.
I've actually explored this idea of perceived disadvantages leading to more assertive or even dominant behavior. It's not about being inherently stubborn, but rather a learned response to navigate a world that often judges people based on appearances.
It's like they're saying, hey, don't underestimate me just because I'm not as tall as you. And that can manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, you mentioned earlier that there's a specific term used on the forum for short men. Maltina bottle guys. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yeah. It's a classic example of Nigerian humor, a bit cheeky, a bit descriptive.
Okay.
Imagine those small, stout Maltina bottles. That's the imagery they're playing with.
Wow. I can totally picture it.
Yeah.
But is it meant to be offensive or is it more lighthearted?
It's tricky, right?
Yeah.
Humor can be a powerful tool for social commentary.
Right.
But it's also important to be mindful of the potential to reinforce negative stereotypes. What's interesting here is that the term is often used affectionately, almost like a badge of honor.
So it's less about making fun of short men and more about acknowledging their presence, their strength, maybe even their resilience.
Exactly. It's a reminder that these stereotypes, even when expressed in jest, are deeply embedded in cultural discourse. And sometimes humor can be a way to address those stereotypes, to make them less threatening to start a conversation.
It makes you think about the different ways cultures use humor to deal with potentially sensitive topics. But even with the humor, we have to acknowledge that stereotypes, even when unintended, can be harmful.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to have these kinds of discussions.
Right.
To examine those ingrained biases and recognize that personality is far more complex than any physical attribute.
This whole thread has been such a roller coaster of opinions, insights, and cultural nuances. And what's great is that even with those strong opinions, there's a genuine attempt to understand different perspectives.
And that's what makes these online forums so fascinating. They can be a microcosm of society, reflecting the diversity of views and the complexities of human interaction.
Speaking of diverse views, one user in the thread brought up a really interesting point. They said, it depends on the individual. Anybody can learn, change, and improve.
That's a powerful reminder that we're all constantly evolving. We shouldn't box people into rigid categories based on their height or any other physical characteristic.
Right. And another user made a similar point saying, everybody get their own Wahala, meaning everyone has their own troubles or challenges.
Yeah.
It's a way of saying, hey, we're all in this together. We all have our own quirks.
It's a reminder that we should approach each other with empathy and understanding. We all have our own stories, our own struggles, and reducing someone to a single trait is never fair or accurate.
It's all about seeing the individual, not just the stereotype.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another crucial point raised in the thread, the potential dangers of attributing personality traits to physical characteristics. It's like we automatically jump to conclusions based on appearance.
It's almost like an instinct.
Right. And this thread really exposes that.
Yeah.
One user pointed this out directly, saying, human body parts define someone's character: shape of eyes, ear, mouth, nose, head, legs, foot, and height. Short people are overzealous. While the comment itself might be problematic in its generalization, it really highlights how quick we are to connect physical traits with personality.
Right, and that's where we need to pause and reflect. You know, like, are we really being fair here?
It's a reminder that we need to be more mindful of the language we use and the judgments we make. Reducing someone's entire personality to their height or any other physical characteristic is not only simplistic, but also dehumanizing.
It's like we're stripping them of their individuality, their unique story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where the conversation about stereotypes becomes really crucial.
Yes.
While humor can be a powerful tool for social commentary and challenging norms, it's essential to be aware of the potential consequences.
Right. Even when presented in a lighthearted way, stereotypes can reinforce negative biases and contribute to discrimination.
Right. Especially when those stereotypes are repeated over and over again.
Yes, definitely.
They can become ingrained in our subconscious and influence how we perceive and interact with others.
And that's something we really need to be cautious of.
So how do we navigate this complex terrain? How do we appreciate humor and cultural nuances without perpetuating harmful stereotypes?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to be conscious of the messages we're sending, both through our words and our actions. And we need to be willing to challenge stereotypes when we encounter them.
It's also about fostering empathy and understanding.
Right.
Taking the time to learn about different cultures, perspectives, and experiences can help us break down biases and build bridges of connection.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our shared humanity is far more powerful than any superficial differences. And that's a beautiful message to leave our listeners with.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a truly fascinating topic. We hope it sparked some thought-provoking conversations and inspired you to challenge assumptions and embrace diversity.
If this discussion has resonated with you, we encourage you to check out the Laurie Talks podcast website for more insightful content and to join the conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others.
Thanks for listening to Laurie Talks. We value your feedback. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.